Welcome to Algebra 2, this is Miss King. We are going to do your first asynchronous session. This is how you will get credit, is by watching this and then answering some questions afterward. So we are going to go over lesson 4, operations on polynomials. The objective will be, I will be able to explain how polynomial expressions are closed by comparing them to integer operations and apply the distributive property to solve addition, subtraction, and multiplication of polynomials problems. So first we need to start out with the key terms. You need to know what they mean. So we have addend, which is a number or term that is added to another number or term, so that's just when you're adding two things together. Closed, in reference to a set having the property under an operation in which the result of the operation on any two elements is always an element of the set. Factor, a number or expression that is multiplied by another number or expression to get a product. Integer, a number that is either a whole number or the opposite of a whole number. Polynomial, an algebraic expression that is the sum of one or more terms in which variables have only one whole number exponents. Product, the result of multiplication. And sum, the result of addition. So these are key terms. They're in your lesson. If you have not looked at your lesson yet, they're also there in your lesson for you to look at if you need to review them more. So now we're going to learn how to add polynomials horizontally. So if two polynomials are added, the sum is always a polynomial. Polynomials are closed under addition. So if we're adding two polynomials together, it's always going to be a closed operation. So we have three steps in order to add polynomials. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to determine like terms. Then we're going to add the like terms together. Then we're going to put the terms in descending order by the power of each term. So that means if the power is 4, and then we have a power 2 and a power of 1, we're going to put it so the one with the highest is in the front, and moving to the right we go down in number. So we'd have the one with the 4, then the 2, and then the 1. So our first example, we're going to add x squared plus 3x minus 7 to 3x cubed minus 4x squared plus 15. So our first step is we're going to identify like terms. So like terms is when they have the same degree of power. So as you can see here, I put them in different colors. So in maroon we have our x squared terms. In blue we have our constants. In purple we have our x cubed. And in pink we just have our x. So now that we have like terms, we're going to go to step 2. We're going to add the like terms together. So we're going to do our maroon with our maroon, our blue with our blue, and then since purple and pink have no other term like it, they're just going to stay how they are with the sign that's in front. So we're going to end up with negative 3x squared, because x squared minus 4x squared is negative 3x squared, plus our 3x, and then negative 7 plus 15 is positive 8, and then plus our 3x cubed. Our last step now is to put in them in descending order of powers. So that means we're going to put it with the highest one here first. So we're going to put it with the cubed term first, then the squared term, then the x term, because remember if there is no exponent up here, it's assumed to be 1, and then our constant. So we're going to end up with 3x cubed minus 3x squared plus 3x plus 8. So that would be our final answer, that when we add these two polynomials together, we end up with the polynomial of 3x cubed minus 3x squared plus 3x plus 8. So now let's see if you can do it on your own. So you can go ahead, pause the video, write down the problem, see if you can do it on your own. Then when you're ready, unpause the video, start it back up, and I'll show you how to do it to see if you got the correct answer. So go ahead and pause the video and do it on your own. Alright, so now that you've done it on your own, let's go ahead and go over it. So the first thing we need to do is we need to identify like terms. So we got our x squared term here, and we got our x squared term here. Then we have a 9x. There is no x over in our other polynomial, so it's all by itself. Then we have our minus 17, and our plus 6. And then our last term here is x cubed, which does not have one like it either. So now we're going to add them together. So 2x squared plus a negative 8x. So 2 minus 8 is negative 6x squared. Then we have our 9x here, so I'm just going to put plus 9x. Negative 17 plus 6 gives us a negative 11, and then we have our x cubed term. So then our last step is to put them into descending order. So we're going to start with our highest ordered term, which is r cubed. So we're going to have x cubed, and then our next one is the squared, minus 6x squared, plus our x term, plus 9x, and then our constant at the end, minus 11. So that should have been what you came up with as your answer. So now you should have gotten that as your answer, x cubed minus 6x squared plus 9x minus 11, which is what we got. So next we're going to go on to adding them vertically. So you can do it whichever way you want, whichever one is more comfortable for you. So in order to add them vertically, we're going to write the polynomials with one on top of the other. Then we're going to determine the like terms and then add them together. So we have x squared plus 3x minus 7 plus 3x cubed minus 4x squared plus 15. So we're going to write them on top of each other, lining up the same order terms. So this should actually be shifted over. Instead of lining them up exactly like this on top of each other, we want it so that these are lined up, so it makes it easier to add them together. Then we're going to identify the like terms. So I already identified the like terms by the colors here. Then the next thing is we're going to add the like terms. So our 3x cubed, there is no other x cubed, so we just get 3x cubed, x squared plus a negative 4x squared gives us our negative 3x squared. 3x plus, then there is no x term here, plus 3x, and then negative 7 plus 15 gives us a positive 8. So we added them together. So now we just need to reorder them if they weren't in order, but since we ordered them up at the beginning, when we added them, they're already in order. So that is our final answer. We get 3x cubed minus 3x squared plus 3x plus 8. So now go ahead, see if you can solve this problem by lining them up on top of each other and doing it on your own. Remember to pause the video, do it, and then come back to it and I'll show you if you got the right answer. Alright, so now that you've tried it on your own, the first step we're going to do is we're going to line like terms up. So I'm going to rewrite the first polynomial, 5x squared minus 9x minus 13, plus, then I'm going to line the terms up. So x cubed, we don't have an x cubed up here. So I'm going to write our x cubed out in the front. We have a minus 15x squared, so let's put that underneath the 5x squared. And then we have a plus 16, so we're going to put that under the constant of negative 13. So now we're just going to add. So there's nothing up on the top, plus 7x cubed just gives us a 7x cubed. 5x squared plus a negative 15x squared gives us a negative 10x squared. Then we have a minus 9x plus there is no x term on the bottom, so we just end up with that minus 9x. And then we have our constants, negative 13 plus 16 gives us a positive 3. So you should have ended up with 7x cubed minus 10x squared minus 9x plus 3. Alright, so that is how you add polynomials in two different ways. You can do whichever one is more comfortable to you. Now we're going to move on to subtracting polynomials. We're going to start first by subtracting them horizontally. So if two polynomials are subtracted, the difference is always a polynomial. Polynomials are closed under subtraction, so anytime we subtract two polynomials, it's always a closed operation. We have 4 steps in order to subtract the polynomials. So we're first going to distribute the subtraction side to the second polynomial, then we'll do our like terms, subtract the like terms, and then put the terms in descending order. So we have our example here. We're going to take x squared plus 3x minus 7 minus 3x cubed minus 4x squared plus 15. So our first step is we're going to take this subtraction here and we're going to distribute it to every one of these terms here. So we're just basically changing the sign. So instead of this being a minus, this is going to be a plus, and we're going to change all the signs inside. Okay, so then we have x squared plus 3x minus 7 plus now the polynomial negative 3x cubed plus 4x squared minus 15. Now it's similar to like the addition problems we just did. So we're going to identify our like terms, and then we're going to complete it the same way as addition. Now that we have our like terms and we have an addition sign here, we're just going to combine our like terms together. So we're going to have x squared plus 4x squared gives us a 5x squared. And then we have our 3x with nothing else, our minus 7 plus a negative 15, negative 22, and then our negative 3x cubed. So when we combine our like terms, we end up like that, and then of course our last step always is to put it into descending order. So we have 3x cubed plus 5x squared plus 3x minus 22 as our final answer when we add it that way. So it's very similar to addition. The only difference is you first just have to distribute that subtraction sign by changing all the signs inside of your second polynomial. Okay, so go ahead, pause the video, and see if you can complete this problem. Alright, now that you have tried to complete it on your own, let's go ahead and do it. So our first step, remember, is that we are going to distribute that subtraction sign inside. So I'm just going to do it up here at the top, so I'm going to change this to a plus. Then we're going to have a minus, a plus, and then over here, instead of this being a plus, we're now going to have a minus. So now we're going to have 2x squared plus 9x minus 17. Our first polynomial stays the same, plus negative x cubed plus 8x squared minus 6. Now we just identify our like terms. So we have an x squared term here, we have an x squared term here, we have a constant and a constant. There's no other term like 9x, and there's no other term like x cubed. So now if we just combine them, 2x squared and 8x squared gives us a 10x squared. Then we have our 9x, that's not like anything else. Negative 17 plus a negative 6 gives us a negative 23. And then our negative x cubed. So then our last step, remember, is just to reorder them. So we're going to have our negative x cubed plus 10x squared plus 9x minus 23. And that should be your answer. Alright, so now we're going to move on to subtracting, just like how we did addition in vertical. We're going to now do subtraction vertically. So it's the similar way that we did it to the addition, except we have to first add in that first step of distributing our subtraction sign. So we're going to take our subtraction, we're going to do x squared plus 3x minus 7 minus 3x cubed minus 4x squared plus 15. So remember, our first step is we're going to distribute that subtraction sign inside. So we're just going to change all of these. So we're going to end up with a plus here, a minus, a plus, and then a minus instead of that plus sign there. Then our next step is we gotta write the two on top of each other and then identify like terms. So it's nice if you line them up here so that you have them in order. Identify your like terms, which I did here in the different colors so that you can easily see it. And then our last step, of course, is now just to add the two polynomials together. And then we gotta check to make sure it's in descending order. Well, it's already in descending order, so we don't need to do anything beyond that. So our answer is just negative 3x cubed plus 5x squared plus 3x minus 22. So it's very similar to the addition, it just adds that one step at the beginning when you're doing subtraction. So now go ahead, pause the video, and see if you can complete this one on your own. Now that you've tried it on your own, let's go ahead and do it together. So the first step, remember, is we gotta distribute this subtraction sign. So I'm just gonna distribute it by adding the plus, changing that to a minus, changing that to a plus, and changing that to a minus sign. So now we have our 5x squared minus 9x minus 13. And then since we're doing vertical, remember we want to add them vertically, so we want to line them up. So we got our 7x cubed, so we got our negative 7x cubed here in front, plus 15x squared. We're going to put that underneath the 5x squared so that it's nice and lined up for us. And then our minus 16 underneath the minus 13 so that it's nice and lined up. And then we're just going to go ahead and add. So we have our negative 7x cubed, our plus 20x squared, our negative x plus is nothing, so we just end up with our negative x, and then negative 13 minus 16 gives us a negative 29. And then we gotta check, make sure it's in descending order, which it is. So then we are all done. So we get negative 7x cubed plus 20x squared minus 9x minus 29. So now our last thing that we're going to work on is we're going to work on multiplying polynomials horizontally. So if two polynomials are multiplied, the product is always a polynomial. Polynomials are closed under multiplication. So anytime that we multiply, add, or subtract, all of those are closed operations for polynomials. To multiply polynomials, we have 3 steps. We're going to rewrite our polynomials so they are in descending order. Then we are going to distribute each term from the first factor to the second factor. And then we're going to combine like terms and put in descending order. So our first step here is to rewrite so they are in descending order. So if we look at them, they're both already in descending order, so we don't need to change them at all. Now we're going to distribute each term from the first factor to the second. So we're going to take each term here in this first one and distribute it to all 3 terms of the second one. So I'm going to start out here. So I'm going to have x squared, and I'm going to multiply that times the whole entire second polynomial. Then I'm going to take my plus 3x and do the same thing. We're going to multiply it times the whole entire second polynomial. And lastly, our last term there, our negative 7, we're going to do the same thing. So now that we have that written out, now we're actually going to distribute and multiply. So we're going to take x squared and we're going to multiply it times our first number there. So we're going to do x squared times 3x cubed. Now remember your power rule that when you have exponents, so if we have x to the a power times x to the b power, remember that the rule is that you add the exponents together. So we're going to have a plus b. So since we both have x's, 2 plus 3 gives us a 5. So we're going to have 3x to the 5th power. Now we're going to take our x squared and distribute it to negative 4x squared. So we're going to have negative 4, and then if we add the exponents, 2 plus 2 gives us 4. Then x squared times our 15, so we get plus 15x squared. So now we're going to do the same thing here for the second one. 3x times 3x cubed, 3 times 3 is 9. And then remember that there's nothing here, so we assume that there's a 1 there as our exponent on x. So 1 plus 3 gives us x to the 4th. 3x now times negative 4x squared. So 3 times negative 4 is a negative 12. And then x times x squared, 1 plus 2 gives us a 3. And then 3x times 15. 15 times 3, if you need to use a calculator, feel free to. 3 times 15 gives us a 45x. And then our last term here, negative 7 times 3x cubed, so a negative 21x cubed. Then negative 7 times negative 4x squared. Negative 7 times negative 4, remember negative times a negative is a positive. 7 times 4 is 28x squared. And then our last one here, negative 7 times 15, so negative times a positive is a negative. And then remember, if you need to use a calculator, go ahead. 7 times 15 is 105. So now our last step is we need to do like terms. So we have our first term is 3x to the 5th. Well, there's no other 3x to the 5th. So I'm going to write 3x to the 5th. Now our next one here is x to the 4th. Let's see if we have any other x to the 4th. So we got 9x to the 4th, and I don't see any more with x to the 4th. So we're going to add those two together. So we have negative 4 plus 9 gives us a positive 5x to the 4th. Our next term here is 15x squared. Let's see if we have any more x squareds. We do. We got 28x squared, so 15 plus 28 gives us a 43x squared. And then we already did the 9x to the 4th, so now we're here on to the x to the 3rd. And we got another x to the 3rd here. So negative 12 minus 21 gives us a negative 33x cubed. Then we have our 45x that doesn't have any other like terms, so we're just going to write plus 45x. And then our very last term that's all by itself also is our minus 105. So now we have all of our like terms combined. Now we just need to make sure it's in descending order. So we just need to swap the x squared and the x cubed. So our final answer is going to be 3x to the 5th plus 5x to the 4th minus 33x cubed plus 43x squared plus 45x minus 105. So as you can see, multiplication takes a little bit more work than addition and subtraction. But there is one other way that I'm going to show you. So you can either do it this way or you can do it the other multiplication way after we learn it. For now, I'm going to give you a practice problem. See if you can complete it just like this one that we just did. So see if you can complete this. 2x squared plus 9x minus 17 times x cubed minus 8x squared plus 6. Remember to do it just like we had just done it. Go ahead and, oh, this shouldn't say add. That should say multiply. So go ahead and multiply these two together. Remember to pause the video and do it, and then come back and see if you got it correct. Alright, so now that you've tried it, let's go ahead and do it. So remember, our first step is to write them in descending order, which both of them already are. So now we're going to distribute each of our terms from the first one to our second one. So we're going to have our 2x squared times our x cubed minus 8x squared plus 6. Then we're going to have our plus 9x times the second polynomial again of x cubed minus 8x squared plus 6. And then our last one, minus 17 times that same polynomial x cubed minus 8x squared plus 6. So now let's go ahead and distribute and see what we get when we end up with distributing that. So we're going to take our 2x squared times that, x cubed, so we get 2x to the 5th. 2x cubed times minus 8x squared, 2 times negative 8 is negative 16x to the 4th. 2x cubed times a positive 6, so we get a plus 12x squared. Then we go on to our next one, 9x times x cubed, 9x to the 4th. 9x times a negative x squared gives us a negative 72x to the 3rd, and then a 9 times 6, we get plus 54. And then on to our last one, negative 17 times x cubed, negative 17x cubed, negative 17 times negative 8. Remember, negative times a negative is a positive. Then we have 17 times 8. Remember, if you need to use a calculator, you can, or remember, you can always do it out by hand if you guys remember this. 7 times 8 gives you a 56, so you got your 6, carry up your 5, 8 times 1 plus 5 is 8 plus 5 gives us a 13, so that's a 136x squared, and then 17 times 6, negative 17 times 6, so we get a negative, and then 17 times 6 gives us a 102. So now we just need to combine our like terms. So 2x to the 5th, there's no other x to the 5th. 2x to the 5th. If you want to skip the last step of having to reorder, just make sure that you're doing the powers in order. So we did our 5th, which was our highest one. So now let's do our 4s. So we got negative 16x to the 4th, 9x to the 4th, gives us a negative 7x to the 4th. Now let's find our 3s. So negative 72x cubed, negative 17x cubed. So we get a negative 89x cubed. Now our squares, we have a 12x squared plus a 136x squared, so we get plus 148x squared. and then we have our 54x here. I forgot the x when we multiplied 9x times 6, but I found my mistake, so that's an x there. So we have our plus 54x, because there's nothing else like it, and then minus 102. And then our numbers are already in descending order, so we don't need to do anything different. So we ended up with 2x to the fifth minus 7x to the fourth minus 89x cubed plus 148x squared plus 54x minus 102. So that is one way of multiplying polynomials together. Now we're going to go on to the next way. So the next way is that we're going to now do them horizontally. So our first step is going to be to rewrite the polynomials with all orders of polynomials. Those missing one will have a 0 in its place. Then we're going to set up all multiplication on top of each other like we would integers, and then multiply and then add our like terms. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to rewrite them so that we have zeros in place. So we're going to take this, and we have an x squared x and a constant. And then we have an x cubed x squared. So we're going to write our x squared plus 3x minus 7. Then we're going to we have 3x cubed minus a 4x squared plus a 0x plus 15. And then we're going to multiply just like we would multiply integers. So we're going to take our 15 and multiply it times everything. So 15 times 7. Remember, if you need to use a calculator, you can. So we get a 105, a negative 105 because we got a minus sign in front of the 7, a plus in front of the 15. Now we're going to do our 15 times 3x. So we get a plus 45x. 15 times 3 is 45. And then 15 times x squared. So we get 15x squared. Okay? Then, remember, when you do multiplication, you add a 0 here. And then we're going to do our next term. So we have 0x times a negative 7. So we have, that gives us a 0. 0x times 3x, 0. So this is a 0 as a 0x here, actually. And then a 0x squared. And then a 0x cubed. So now, since we're on our third term here, we need to add a 0 for the first term we already did, and a 0 for that second term that we already did. So now we're going to take negative 4x squared times negative 7. So negative 4 times negative 7 is a positive 28x squared. Negative 4x squared times a positive 3x squared, so we get negative 12x cubed. And then our negative 4x squared times x squared, so we get just a negative 4x to the fourth. And then our very last term here. So now, since we're on our last term, we got to add those 3 zeros here at the beginning. And make sure it's helpful to include the term, the x afterward, for the ones that you're filling in. If you notice, we're lining up all of our constants, all of our x terms, all of our x squared terms, our x cubed, and so on, so that it makes it easier for us to combine the like terms at the end. So now we're going to do 3x cubed times a negative 7. So we're going to have a negative 21x cubed. 3x squared cubed times 3x gives us a positive 9x to the fourth. And then our last one there, 3x cubed times x squared, is a 3x to the fifth. So then our last thing is we got to just add all of our terms. So we have a negative 105 here, 45x, 0, 0, 0, so that's just a positive 45x. Then x squared, 15x squared, 0, 15, so we have just the 15 and 28, so that gives us a 43x squared. Now our x cubes, so negative 12 and negative 21 x cubes, so that gives us a negative 33x cubed. And don't forget to include your signs here. And then negative 4x to the fourth plus 9x to the fourth gives us a positive 5x to the fourth. And then our last one here, 3x to the fifth. So that would be our answer. So we end up with 3x to the fifth plus 5x to the fourth minus 33x cubed plus 43x squared minus 45x, or plus 45x minus 105. So now go ahead and I'm going to give you a practice problem. See if you can do the practice problem the way that we just did it. Remember to pause your video and then go ahead and do it. So now that you've paused your video and done it, now we're going to go ahead and do it. So we have our 5x squared minus 9x minus 13 times 7x cubed. Remember to fill in zeros if there is any missing ones. So we got our 0x, wrote that a little big, plus 16. Alright, so now we're going to start our multiplication. So we got 16 times 13. I can't do that in my head, so I'm going to go ahead and do that off to the side here. Remember, you can use a calculator if you need to. So we get 208. So we have a minus 13, a plus 16, so that means we're going to have a negative 208 there. 16 times negative 9x. Remember, you can use a calculator. So we get a 144, and we have negative times a positive, so that's again a negative 144x. 5x squared times a positive 16, so that's going to be a positive, and we're going to end up with an x squared, and that gives us 80x squared. So now we're done with our 16. So now we need to remember add our 0 here at the end because we did one term. Then we have 0x times everything. Remember 0 times everything just gives you 0. So we have our 0x, we get a 0x squared, and then when we do 0x times 5x squared, we get a 0x cubed. So now we're on negative 15x squared. So negative 15 times 13 gives us positive, but remember before we can do it, we need to add our zeros. So since we're on the third term, we need to add 2 zeros here before we do it. So we're going to get a positive because negative times a negative is a positive. Then we're going to do 15 times 13. So when we do that, we get 195 x squared. Negative 15x squared times a negative 9x, we get an x cubed. And then since it's a negative times a negative, we're going to have a positive. And then 15 times 9 gives us a 135. And then 15x squared times 5x squared. So we got a negative 15 times 5. So remember we got x squared is x to the fourth, then 15 times 5 is 75, x to the fourth. Now our last term is 7x cubed, so remember we need to add in our zeros, so since we're on the fourth term, we need to add in the first 3 as zeros. So now 7x cubed times a negative 13, we got a negative 7 times 13 is 91 x cubed. Then we have 7x squared times a negative 9x, so we're going to end up with a negative, and this is going to be an x to the fourth, and then 9 times 7 gives us 63. And then our last one's 7x to the fifth times 5x squared, so we have a 35x to the fifth. Kind of ran out of a little bit of room, so you might want to do most of your problems off to the middle or the right side of your paper so that you don't run out of room like I just did. So now we're going to add them together. So we get over here on the right side, negative 28 plus 0, we get a negative 208. Negative 144x plus all 0x, and negative 144x. Our x squareds here, 80 and 195, gives us a 275x squared. And then our 135 minus 91 gives us a positive 44x cubed. Negative 75 and negative 63 gives us a negative 138x to the fourth, and then our 35x to the fifth out in the front. So as you can see, multiplication definitely takes a lot of work. So we end up with 35x to the fifth minus 138x to the fourth plus 44x cubed plus 275x squared minus 140x minus 208. So you can pick whichever way of multiplication makes more sense, along with whichever way of subtraction and whichever way of addition. So now, in order to get your points for synchronous and asynchronous session for week 1, now that you've watched this, is you're going to go to the announcements, click on the link to the Google form, complete the Google form to show me your understanding of the concepts. If you still have any additional questions about anything or still need help with any of it, please contact me by email, phone, or message. And you'll have more examples when you start doing lesson 4. There'll be more stuff for you to do in there for you to be able to show that you understand it in lesson 4, since this is over lesson 4. Remember, just contact me if you have any questions. Have a nice day.